Welcome to the Virtual Center for the Study of the Constitution and Civic Responsibility, an ongoing inquiry into American political origins and evolving institutions. The Executive Director of the Virtual Center is Dr. Bill O'Brien. He's also your host for this continuing conversation. Here he is now, Dr. Bill O'Brien.
Thank you, Bob Kincaid. It's so nice to hear your voice after so long. It's great to hear you. I know it's because, at least I'm almost sure it is because today is Labor Day. It's a holiday, and so you had a day off the road. But whatever, it is really delightful to hear your voice, Bob, and it was really pleasant to chat for a few moments before we went on the air on this absolutely gorgeous Labor Day. Today is Monday. It is the 5th day of September in the year 2016. And first of all, let me welcome all of you to today's holiday edition of the Virtual Center. And let me first congratulate working people on this well-earned and well-deserved holiday. And for all those people who want to be working and can't quite make it because they're kind of in this dismal financial economic situation that we live in here in this particular region, happy Labor Day to you as well. And in many, many ways, you probably deserve a day of rest and relaxation more than people who are working do, if that makes sense. So again, thank you. I hope that you're having a wonderful, wonderful holiday. The weather here in Appalachia, at least, is fabulous. And from what I understand, the storm is far enough out at sea that it's not causing too much trouble for too many people. I know the folks in Florida are still reeling from it, but I think we did catch a break this weekend when it went further out to sea than folks expected. So welcome to a new month, the month of September here at the Virtual Center. I hope that your day is going well, and I know that we probably have some people tuned in live today that we usually don't get during the regular work week on a Monday. So if that applies to you out there, welcome to the live edition, if you will, of the Virtual Center. And I guess the implication that all of that is based on an assumption that I'm alive, and I'm faking it the best I can. I'm trying. So welcome to a new week of programming here at the Virtual Center. And I say that, and I don't mean to be facetious, but in a sense, I do want to make you aware of some scheduling changes, those of you who are with us regularly live here at the Virtual Center. Today's program, the Labor Day program, looks like it's going to be the sole program live for the week. I have an obligation, a field trip obligation tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, I'm scheduled to be involved in some politicking. Campaign begins in earnest with Labor Day. As many of us know, we're hearing that in the media all the time. And of course, with Donald and as Hillary, but especially Donald, it seems like his campaign has been fired up for the last year and a half. But anyway, even the media is saying that things kind of shift into high gear beginning on Labor Day. And for me, that's very, very true. So, but I'm scheduled to do a little bit of politicking locally here on Wednesday. I have a couple of appointments out of the region, and I want to meet with a few folks and try to negotiate a few opportunities to put up some campaign signs and things like that. So with each day counting as we move closer and closer to November 8th, I really believe that the best thing to do, given the fact that we're looking at some pretty good weather for the next couple of days, that it was a good idea to take advantage of that. So I just kind of wanted to make folks aware that Agnes will be probably running a previous program tomorrow, and then on Wednesday somewhat similar. But today is today, and we have a full program, and it is a pleasure to be with you. I do invite you to share some of your thoughts and your ideas. I know there are some folks out there that we usually don't get a chance to speak to live. So if you'd like to come on the air and share your thoughts, your ideas, your concerns, whatever they might be, we sure would love to hear from you on this Labor Day. Our phone number is area code 304-663-4676. 304-663-4676. My email address, if you'd like to communicate with me in an email and depend on me to get your ideas on the air, I'd be glad to do that for you. My email address is waobrien906@gmail.com. That's waobrien, OBRIEN, 906@gmail.com. And again, I do call your attention to our Facebook page. I try to keep the page pretty active. For the last couple of weeks, the folks at Facebook have not posted me or notified me that it's been a few days since I put something on there. So at least from the folks who manage the Facebook page for Facebook, I've been doing a fairly good job getting a few things on there. So I do encourage you to look at our Facebook page. Just go to the homepage of Facebook, which is facebook.com. And in the search box at the top, just type in the Virtual Center for the Study of the Constitution, and you will be into our Facebook page. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I put at least one item, I think maybe two items on there yesterday. Both of them were links to particular programs that I ran across in my Sunday reading yesterday. And they deal, some of them deal directly with the national campaign. Others deal with issues that I think all of you would be well put. One of those particular Facebook entries is one that I would like to address as part of today's program. So it's an article that appeared in the Wheeling, West Virginia Intelligencer. The author is Chris Reagan, who is an attorney in Wheeling, and it's a pretty powerful article, and I did put the link on our Facebook page and write a few lines about that particular article. And I think in the course of today's program, it'll probably come up during conversation as well. So again, when I use the word conversation, I don't do that loosely. Obviously, I am fully aware that the best way to hold a conversation is with more than one person. So, I'm using that as an opportunity to encourage you again to pick up the phone and get on the air with us and share your thoughts and your ideas and give the folks out there an opportunity to hear your thoughts and your ideas, and that maybe will prompt them to do the same thing with their own ideas. And once we start that, the whole nature of the program begins to change a little bit by putting most of the emphasis on those of you out there rather than on things that I might be saying. For those of you who are regular listeners to the Virtual Center, you know that in our last program last week, in our time together, I shared an article, a fairly short article. It was actually 37 pages long. It's what they refer to as an ebook. And it was sent to me by Horst from Taiwan. And I based our last program, our last day together, on that particular article and have received a number of very positive comments about it. And one of the emails that I received was a note from Horst reminding me that there are no publication or private property restrictions on that particular piece, and that I would be free to put it on our Facebook page and give all of you the opportunity to read the article itself. As I say, it's 37 pages, but on the other hand, it's double-spaced, which means the 37 pages are not nearly as intimidating as one would normally think 37 pages of single-spaced copy might be. So I'm kind of excited today about all of this and just the idea of being back with you. So I apologize for that. I'm kind of talking a little bit faster than my tongue can move, and I apologize for that. But anyway, I did put the article in question, the ebook in question, on our Facebook page, the link to it. And a number of you have looked at it. I've gotten 3 or 4 direct comments about the article. But more important, I see an awful lot of likes and shares and a number of other things on Facebook. So it appears that people are reading this and are moving it around and making acquaintances that they have aware of this particular piece. So I think that it's getting a lot more attention than even I might have anticipated, might have expected. So for that, I appreciate it. And what that might mean is that some of the folks either tuned in with us today live or who'll be hearing us on the archive version of this program in coming days are going to be hearing a little bit more about an article that many of them have read. That makes it so much more meaningful, so much more helpful, obviously, because everything they hear is not news, so to speak. But more important, it increases the likelihood that we're going to get some reaction to it. And I do anticipate and look forward to that as a possibility. That might in turn become part of today's program. Let's hope so. But since it's been 4 or 5 days since the last time we were together, and since that particular article was the theme of our program, I thought that I would go back today for the beginning of our time together today and do a little bit of rehash. And I will do it with an apology. The last time I did this particular piece, I know I could tell that I was getting really fired up about it because I think it's that rich a piece. It's that much worth your time. This is one that I think everybody ought to not just read, but it's one that I think people might want to keep available and read every once in a while because it's an incredibly profound and perceptive look at divisions in our society, and I mean our society generally in terms of our national society, our American society, but the fact of the matter is what makes this particular article so meaningful is it applies to other developing societies around the world. In other words, this article seems to lay out, the title of it, of course, is The Great Divide, and it seems to define pretty well the controversy or the divisions, if you will, that are existing in many countries in the world that are being played out on our international stage. It seems to give meaning to a lot of activities that at least on the surface might not seem to be related, but indeed they are. Let me just give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about, and this is just my observations. I mean, I don't have any, I didn't do any particular research into this, but these are just observations that I've made in thinking about this. As we go back in previous months in our programs here at the Virtual Center, I'm thinking back to a time, I know it was probably a lot longer ago than I remember it was, but you'll recall that we spent quite a bit of time here at the Virtual Center on the Greek financial situation, the overturning of the Greek government and the Greek default on the euro, and the high-level meetings that were going on in Brussels about what the international banking interests were going to do with Greece and with the economy and all the rest of it. We spent quite a bit of time on that. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you think about it, this particular article really puts that whole situation into a context of sorts. Because what it does is speak to the conflict between the international community and its members. And what it speaks to is the fact that already a class system of sorts has emerged within the international community between the well-developed economies and the developing economies. And what that seems to have done is create a whole different set of priorities depending on where on that ladder you might fall, depending on what country you're in. If you're in Greece, for example, and you're looking at the international situation, you're on the proverbial short end of the stick because you're in debt. You're not able to pay your financial responsibilities. On the other hand, the investment group of nations that's really calling the shots internationally is demanding payment because the last thing that they can do is to condone defaults, because once you let people get away with defaults on obligations, then suddenly, obviously, the defaults have a tendency to increase. So this whole thing, as far as Greece was concerned, involved much more than Greece. And the decisions affecting Greece involved much more than Greece as well. Greece became kind of a poster child, a first opportunity for the international financial sector to demonstrate what membership in the international financial community was all about. It had benefits, but it also has responsibilities. And that basically seems to be the message. And so, in a sense, what I'm saying is, if you look back to that, you can begin to see that it kind of fits into this great divide scenario as well. From the perspective of the financial big shots, those calling the shots in the international financial community, we can begin to see this too, because what we're talking about is a whole set of financial rules governing the international economy, which local economists and local governments are being required to meet. And in this particular case, of course, it was creating real problems. Then, more recently, one of the major issues that we spent quite a bit of time on here was the decision of the British voters to leave the European Union. And that becomes an obvious example of a situation that the Great Divide seems to take into consideration. It's a classic example of what the author of this particular ebook was trying to, or was making us aware of. And so, in a sense, what I'm saying is, all of this speaks to the value of the ebook itself, to the value of the 37-page study that now all of us have at our disposal, because the link to it is on our Facebook page, and the opportunity is there for everybody to read it. And again, I kind of encourage you to be aware that while it's 37 pages, and that's a bit intimidating going in, the fact of the matter is the spacing means that there's not that much content on each page. You can flip through the pages fairly quickly, it seems to me. But at the same time, the subject is so substantive that you'll find yourself pausing periodically to reflect on what you're reading and reflect on the significance and importance of what you're reading. It's a very substantive piece. It has a lot to say. It's chock full of interesting perspectives, interesting ways of looking at things. And what we focused on for the most part in our last program together were the political ramifications of this. How much of our current campaign for the presidency here seems to be tied up or seems to be put into context, if you will, within the study of the Great Divide. Because what the ebook tends to do is speak or seek to explain the priorities of two groups of people which seem to exist in today's developed world. And depending on where you are within that world, the level of development and sophistication is going to be different, but the principle is the same. We spent quite a bit of time here in recent programs talking about the nature of the constituency that most avidly supports the candidacy for president of Donald Trump. We talked about it, looked at the research. We talked about the poor, less educated white working class. Those people that tend to be falling out of the middle class. That group of people for whom jobs are disappearing as international financial considerations are causing employers to move operations around the world into places to reduce cost, to improve their bottom lines. And what that means is it's rendering large numbers of people unemployed rather quickly. And so what we've seen happening in many industrial countries for many years is now underway on a global scale and visible in places and amongst people that never saw it happen before. It's a phenomenon which is part of the process of an international free trade world. A world which focuses on the nature of the world as a potential open market opportunity. It's a product of the very nature of modern capitalism, the so-called new capitalism, which we focused on in the through the eyes of Richard Sennett principally. And we looked at a number of the changes that are occurring in the world of finance and the world of manufacturing, the industrial world, commercial world of today, and how the skills and the priorities of the workforce are changing drastically and rather rapidly. And the result is that these changes are rendering large numbers of people useless. That's Richard Sennett's term. Unemployed, jobs are not increasing the way they should. The old idea in capitalism of creative destruction is not operating as it's supposed to in the textbooks. The idea being with creative capitalism that as capitalism develops, jobs continue to disappear, but they are usually replaced by new jobs, more challenging jobs, better jobs, higher paying jobs. And the result is that as long as the jobs being created outpace the number of the jobs being eliminated, then that means that opportunities for displaced workers continue to expand. And so they have the opportunity to move for their own best interests, as well as the employers have chosen to move in their own best interests. That's creative destruction in the ideal. But the fact of the matter is the kind of job displacements that's happening today is not that. The kind of job displacement that is happening today is resulting in permanent unemployment. Because, first of all, there are not as many new jobs being created, but even more challenging is the fact that these new jobs being created are so much more demanding of higher order skills than were the previous ones, that many of the people being displaced don't qualify for the new jobs being created. There aren't as many of them, and the skill demands are much more competitive and much more difficult to meet. Consequently, large numbers of people displaced are being permanently displaced. And what they've been forced to do is eat into what little retirement many of them have been able to accumulate, or whatever savings they might have been able to accumulate. And the fact of the matter is, what we're dealing with now are large numbers of people in the industrialized world who are finding themselves in desperate situations. Their resources are gone. Meaningful, good-paying jobs are not available. And many of them are forced to take service sector jobs that pay nowhere near the salaries of the jobs that were lost. Many of them don't come with benefits. Many of them are not full-time. Many of them obviously don't carry health care, let alone retirement benefits and other kinds of fringe activities like vacations and health care and a number of other things. And the fact of the matter is, many of these people have seen their standard of living decline precipitously. Some of them have been forced to work 2 jobs. Some of them, we hear stories about people trying to work 3 jobs. But even together, the income from the 3 jobs doesn't meet the financial level of the jobs that were lost, nor does it deal with the psychological benefits associated with work either. These jobs aren't as fulfilling. They seem to be no growth jobs. They don't seem to have any built-in opportunities for advancement. They aren't the kind of jobs that people go after. They're the kind of jobs that people find themselves forced to take because they really don't have any option. Unemployment insurance or unemployment benefits, if they live in an economy where unemployment exists at all, have run out. Savings are tapped. For example, I am good friends with a very, very close friend who lost his job not quite a year ago, about 10 months ago. Hadn't been in the job that long. I think been in the totally for the job for about a dozen years, maybe, or a little bit less. Which means that he didn't have enough time in a short period of 10 or 11 years to accumulate the kind of retirement benefits that become substantive. But he did have a little bit, and he's had to tap into that in order to survive over the time that he's been unemployed, especially since unemployment insurance has run out. And so his retirement benefits are gone, his unemployment insurance is gone, and he found himself taking a job. Actually, the job he ended up getting was not nearly that bad, which speaks to the qualifications and the skills that he possesses. It's a pretty good job, much better than he expected to have to take. But the fact of the matter is, he's in a rather desperate situation, and he's not alone. And I think that's what we're talking about. This particular ebook, and let me get you a couple of the specific details because I've been so interested in the content that I really haven't been paying the attention I should to the details. The author of this particular book is Rob Smith. Publication date July 2016. And the full title of the ebook, the link to which you can get on our Facebook page at thevirtualcenter.com, on facebook.com, is The Great Divide, Globalization Post-Scarcity World. A post-scarcity world. A world on scarce resources. How do we, the implication title, how do we redirect or refocus our on functioning in a world where all of numbers of other people who cannot? And the result is the requirement to pretty much refocus and restructure for a world that never existed before. I'm taking a moment because I detect a problem with our internet connection, and I just want to make sure that everything is okay.
You're fine, Bill.
So anyway, with that, that's really the title of the ebook. And I wanted to go back and take some time, because I know we've got different people listening to us today that aren't with us live during our regular broadcasts. So I thought that I would do is try to present what I think from the ebook, a fairly short but at the same time comprehensive look at the nature of the divisions we're talking about between what Rob Smith, the author, calls globalists and tribalists. Globalists are those who have adjusted to and are prepared to meet the challenges of a changing international landscape, world landscape. Tribalists are not. Tribalists have made the decision to dig in their heels, so to speak, and to do everything they can to keep the changed world out as much as they can. And the example that the author uses and the example that we used in our last program was looking at some of the most prominent aspects of Donald Trump's political campaign: the building of a wall, the exclusion or the reduction of immigrants, the exclusion in the name of fighting terrorism, the exclusion of Muslims from our shore, much more focus on law and order, and the rest of it. The idea that a world which is so complex that most people have trouble understanding it is a world where one person, the type of person that James Madison referred to in the Federalist Papers as a demagogue, urges people to get behind him, because whatever the challenge is, whatever the problem, I can fix it. And so what it does is give hope to the desperate. Give hope to those who really don't see any other alternative. It promises substantial change. It threatens revolutionary change. It seems to me that all of it is something that we all need to understand. And so let's make an effort to do just that. One of the sources cited in this ebook, in Rob Smith's ebook, is a psychologist, a developmental psychologist, Suzanne Cook Grutter. And Suzanne Cook Grutter tries in a statement to explain the differences between the globalist and the tribalist. I'd like to focus on the particular quotation from this developmental psychologist. Look at the two examples and see if we can basically gain the understanding we need from those. This would describe the person who has made the decision to accommodate world centrism, to accommodate the nature, the key aspects of the global world, the intercommunication, free trade world that we're talking about. What she talks about then is that if you look at, excuse me, if you imagine in your mind a spectrum, a horizontal line, and right in the middle of that line is a vertical line dissecting it. And that vertical line is the Great Divide. And so the globalists are on one side, on the right side of the line. The tribalists are on the left side of the line. All right, she says, now let's go to just the right side of the line and let's look at what the people on that side of the line are about, what makes them tick, what they believe, how they function, how they educate their children, what they believe about the world they're preparing to live in, etc., etc. Here is her quote. Our educational systems on this side of the line, on the right side of the Great Divide, are geared toward producing adults with the mental capacity and the emotional self-reliance of what she calls the conscientious stage. That is, rationally competent, independent adults. People who can function in a changed world as independent people. Democracy as a form of government is based on the idea of a citizenry that has the capacity to think independently and make reasoned, informed choices. Let me stop there for a moment. The implication then of what she said so far about those functioning on the right side of the Great Divide are people reared who grow up in an educational system which focuses on the need to create independent, self-sufficient, thinking individuals. Individuals who are prepared to be self-reliant, both emotionally and economically. They consider their education system prepares them to be competent, independently functioning adult citizens. Their form of government, based on a democracy or some aspect of it, requires a citizenry that also has the capacity to think independently and to make informed, reasonable choices. In other words, the economic system, the political system, the educational system are all in tune. They're all designed to produce individuals who can function productively in this kind of a changed world. They've gained, I'm back to the quote now, they've gained a measure of independence and self-authorship that makes them feel that they're masters of their ships. These people have enough confidence in themselves and their abilities to believe that they can function independently. They don't need other people for everything. It's not that they don't need people for anything, because by definition, if we live in a society, in an organized community, then at some level, everybody needs other people. But the emphasis here is on independent, self-sufficient, independently functioning people. These are people, as the author says, as Cook-Grutter says, who have gained the measure of independence and self-authorship to make them believe that they're in control, that they're masters of their own ship, captains of their own self-enterprise. They're no longer as vulnerable to being accepted or excluded as earlier stage adults were. Now, because they're thinking individuals, they can now notice contradictions and inconsistencies both within themselves and in the belief systems they adhere to. They may see that the way a problem is framed is in effect the problem itself. These conscientious adults are committed to work toward the betterment of humanity according to what they consider to be the ideal future. In other words, they are thinking independent people, but they're also socially conscious people. They realize that everybody, we're all in this together. It's not just a matter of me making it. If I'm making it and the people around me are not, that's a problem. So logically then, these people are able to figure it out and accept the fact that what they can do to help their neighbors, their fellow man, adjust to this kind of a world ultimately will benefit them. It'll help the neighbors, but it'll also help them as well. Feedback can now be listened to without necessarily agreeing with it or feeling one's whole identity has been diminished. You can handle people who don't think exactly the way you do. As you move into a bigger, more involved, more engaged world, you're going to run into more and more people who think differently than you do, who believe differently than you do, who dress differently than you do, who look differently than you do. But you are prepared for it. And part of that preparation we call tolerance. The realities, the ideas of living in a divided, pluralistic world where everybody's not exactly the same. Marriage is not exactly the same as you always envisioned it. The family is not exactly the nuclear family that many of us grew up believing was the only kind of family that you could have. We now realize that different cultures and different peoples have different practices as far as family is concerned, as far as raising children is concerned. All of it is informed by this education system, this preparation, and the value system that goes along with it. Now you will run into people who think differently than you do, who don't agree with everything you believe. But on the other hand, you've been trained, you've been prepared, you can handle that. Whether the critic, the person who disagrees with you, whether the critic is right, misinformed, or even if they've misjudged me, I look at the response as useful information about myself and about the critic. I'm constantly adjusting, constantly collecting new information, new evidence, new data, which gives me more insight into changes that I need to make in myself in order to better adjust to the changing world I'm living in. In general, then, concerned with reasons, causes, goals, consequences, the more effective use of time. They believe that the truth about themselves can be found and are motivated to figure things out and to inquire. These are independently functioning people who are constantly becoming more independent, constantly becoming better functioning, constantly becoming self-educated. These are people that are prepared. Their educational system, their economy, their belief system, their family structure, their values, all of these things fit into a pattern which basically is preparing them to live in and to prosper in a world which is different from the world that used to be. This is the world of the globalist. This is the world our education system is geared to preparing us to function in. This is the world that employers must function in economically. This is the individual that employers are looking for in order to help them move the company, move the organization into the successful navigation of this new global world of economic free trade, of buying and selling and production. This is the world of change. And the individual we're talking about is the individual who has been prepared to deal with it, to live in it, and hopefully to prosper in it. These are the people that the supporters of Donald Trump consider to be the enemy. These are the people that are forcing them to deal with new forms of organization, with different definitions of marriage, which new ways of changing, which provide new ways of changing even gender, as transgender people are becoming realities in this world. We're dealing with people, we're not even sure which bathroom they should use. That's how much has changed from a world that was so secure, so stable, so predictable. It seems like it's all gone. That's the world of the globalist. The world of the tribalist, however, is the world of those who refuse to accept that. who have made the decision to dig in their heels and not be pushed around anymore. These are the people that have decided the world is telling me that everything I always wanted and everything I always believed to be true is not. I refuse to make any more accommodations. Damn it, I want to hold on to the world that makes sense to me. Therefore, I'm going to do everything I can to keep this new world out of my world. If we have to build a wall, let's build it. If we have to arm the police, let's do it. If we need to hire more policemen, if we need to trample on individual rights under our Constitution in order to protect our way of life, let's do it. If we need to profile people, the people who might pose the greatest threat to us, then let's do it. We can't afford the luxury of wondering about or guessing as to where the line between legitimate punishment and not legitimate punishment resides. We can't worry about the issues of free speech and all the rest of it. Not only that, but we need to find people who can lead us, who believe the same things we believe. We need to put people in power who are committed to preserving our world. In effect, what we're doing, I'm stepping out of the context of presentation here. This is an analytical comment. What we're in effect doing is defining the political campaign of a Donald Trump. Anyone who wants to be successful in today's world can do that by becoming the person that this tribalist mentality wants to find, by posing as the leader. In other words, by assuming the role of demagogue, by becoming everything that these frightened, frustrated, angry people want in a leader. As this particular ebook says, and this is a quote, it, meaning this kind of mentality, this kind of person, it can see and find lacking the demagogue's preference to take complex global matters and reduce them to overly reduced, simple-sounding, fear-based pseudo-principles. What the demagogue offers these people, these frightened, frustrated, angry, disoriented, confused people, what the demagogue offers are simplistic answers to complex problems. If you're worried about crime, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. If you're worried about immigrant crime, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. If you're worried about drugs, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. If you're worried about better schools, trust me. I'm using this in perspective. What the hell do you have to lose? Give me a chance. The world that's happening around you today is crushing you. What do you have to lose by giving me the chance to provide some answers for you? All I need is your support. All I need is the power that you and people who believe the same things you do can give me. If you all can come together and support me and follow me, I can fix it. That, according to the author Rob Smith, is the definition of the tribalist. The tribalist functions in a world which is pre-global, ethnocentric stage in development. It's the world before pluralism. It's the world in which most people were the same. Most people wanted the same things. Most people believed the same things. Most people made the same kinds of choices. It was a world that was predictable. It was a world that people could handle. It was a world not of individualism so much as conformity. We don't need a world made up of people who are committed to doing their own thing. We need a world of people committed to doing the right thing, who are willing to conform to the rules, to the traditions, to what's always worked, to what we grew up believing was right. That's what we need in our world. That, then, is the world of the tribalist. We're going to pause. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to pause, as we usually do on Mondays and Wednesdays and on 2-hour programs. Take a 5-minute break, give everybody an opportunity to step back a couple of steps and relax a little bit. And then we'll come back and we'll do our commence with our second hour. We'll begin that hour by looking at the developmental psychologist's definition of tribalism. How does this person differ from the person we looked at earlier? You're listening to the Virtual Center for the Study of the Constitution and Civic Responsibility. Today is Monday. It is the 5th day of September in the year 2016. We're pausing at the top of our first hour for a 5-minute break, and then we'll be right back. I hope that you'll stay with us. Thank you. This is Bill O'Brien back for our second hour here at the Virtual Center on this Labor Day, the 5th day of September in the year 2016. If you are just joining us, we welcome you to today's program. If you've been with us through the first hour, then first of all, I want to thank you for staying with us. And secondly, I want to welcome you to today's program. It's entirely possible, as I mentioned, that because today is a holiday, many people will be listening live today that don't ordinarily get the chance to do that. And most of them pick it up later on a podcast of one type or another. So if that's you and you'd like to get on the air with us and be heard, we would love to hear from you. Our phone number is area code 304-663-4676. 304-663-4676. My email address, if you'd like to communicate with us that way, is waobrien906 at gmail.com. That's waobrien, OBRIEN 906 at gmail.com. And again, I do encourage you to take a look at our Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and then at the search box, at the top of the homepage, just type in the Virtual Center for the Study of the Constitution, and you will be into our Facebook page. And you will note as you scroll down on that page that one of the postings that I put on there toward the end of last week was this particular ebook, The Posting the link given us by Horst, and the entire document is there for your reading pleasure. So we do encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to do it yet, that you do take a look at it. I understand that we did have a caller calling in just as we took our break, and that particular caller hung up during the break. So if the caller is still out there and wants to call back, we'd love to get you on the air. We were talking about the nature of the split, if you will, the so-called Great Divide between globalists and tribalists. And we spent the better part of our first hour, the latter part of our first hour, talking about the elements or the key aspects of globalism, what the globalist tends to believe, how the globalist looks at the world, the education system that best prepares individuals to function autonomously in that world, the political system best tuned to it, and the value system, the ideas of tolerance, respect for other people, respect for different ideas, recognizing that in the world there are contradictions. Everybody doesn't think alike, speak alike, look alike, to believe the same things or whatever. And so basically, if the political and economic environment we've lived in, we've grown up in, has adequately prepared us for this world, then when we become adults, we become basically independent thinking, functioning adults in this particular world. The tribalists are those that have dug in their heels and have made the decision not to conform to this world. And for this, I'd like to go back to the developmental psychologist we quoted before, Suzanne Cook Grutter, who gave us the description of the globalist that we looked at in our last hour. Now I'd like to look at the description she gives us of the tribalist, those people that she calls, and she doesn't do this negatively, she doesn't do this pejoratively, she really means this, conformists. She's looking at the idea of being a conformist, not as a negative, but as a positive. And I think what this points out to all of us, I think I should make mention of this fact, that what this means to all of us is that if we've grown up in a world and been educated to function in a world which we define as globalist, then we're going to look at the conformist from a negative perspective. We're going to be critical. We're going to be dismissive of conformists. What this particular definition of the conformist seeks to do is explain it, the idea of conformity, but not necessarily be critical of it. The reason is that part of understanding the nature of this great divide is to realize that there are a large number of conformists out there. These are the people who voted to leave the European Union. These are the people who voted for Brexit a couple of months ago. These are the people who are the most ardent supporters of Donald Trump. These are the people who have pretty much chosen to take the route of going through state governments and taking control of state legislatures and governorships in order to bring about or to preserve and protect the world that they value the most. A world which will take issue with and draw a line in the sand against globalism. This is her description of the conformist. Conformist adults actually relish the dependency that group membership bestows. Translation: conformist adults, by definition, don't totally value individualism, independence. It's not that they want people who are totally dependent, but they want to preserve a world which is based on interdependency, which is based more on the things that unite people, not the things that divide them. So conformist adults actually relish the dependency that group membership bestows. It provides safety in numbers and a new sense of power. There's power in factionalism. The self is defined by and generated by the expectations and values of those others to whom one belongs. Your sense of being, your sense of worth, is explained and driven by the degree to which you and the people around you are similar, not different. Conformists tend to accept norms without inspection or questioning. Their cognitive world is divided into simple categories and types of people, mostly based on external distinctions. The boundaries between self and others, however, are confused, literally fused, and blurred. In other words, the danger is that you can become so interdependent, so conformist, that it's really difficult to distinguish you as a person from those around you because they're so much like you, or rather, you are so much like them. On the one hand, there's total acceptance of the family and in-group, such as peer groups in adolescence. On the other hand, we see blind rejection of deviance and outgroups. A key distinction or definition here is that you are comfortable when those around you are the same. But it stands to reason that if there's a group of people, all of whom are the same, then together all of these people are going to resent those who are different, those who don't fit in to the group, outsiders, members of what we call the outgroup, others. It's them against us instead of persons' lonely stance of me against them. It's not just me against them. It's them against us. It's their world against my world, which includes everybody else, even family members. For the conformist, you are either ally and friend and approve of us and what we do, or you are the enemy. There's no such thing as being neutral, as being a moderate, as being a little bit of this and a little bit of that, as having one foot in our camp, but the other foot in the other camp. You're either with us or you're not with us. That's the way these people see the world. The more status the group has, the more conformists feel worthy as one of its members. The more respect your group gets, the more important you become, because your very existence is as part of that group only. If you weren't in that group, you wouldn't even be. Your only role in this life is to add strength and numbers to the group that you belong to. if you took some effort to fulfill the required demonstration of obedience and submission, they feel honored to be admitted and wearing the insignia that tells others so. You're proud of your membership in that group. It is not out of the realm of reason that you all feel so comfortable, so proud of the group you're in, that you would want to find a way to signify it to others. Maybe a pin, maybe a badge, maybe a uniform, maybe a salute, maybe a pledge. Remember a couple of months ago during the primaries when Donald Trump was asking all those in his rallies to raise their hands and commit to the pledge to support him and vote for him, and how quickly that ended because so many people related it to the Sieg Heil of the 1930s in Germany. And he even made mention in a rally or two about how ridiculous it was for some people to even suggest that this was the same thing as the Nazi salute. But in fact, it was. And in fact, he and his advisors obviously made the decision to let it go. But that's the division in the world. So if we're clear on the differences between the two groups, then let's move on to the situation that we find ourselves in today's world with the divisions that exist between these two groups. Question: what would be the attraction of leaving the world of conformity for the globalist world? Why would anyone choose to take the risk of leaving your comfort zone for a world that's totally different than the one you know? Because in reality, that's the choice that many people have been asked to make in recent years. They've been asked to move across country, to move out of country, to move from city into country. They've been asked to pick up family, pick up all they own, and move it into a world they know nothing about. What has made them do it? Obviously, the answer is opportunity. The prospect of prosperity. A good paying job. Better education for your children. More job growth and opportunity. The kind of culture that you most like to raise your children in. Whatever it is that might attract you to the globalist world that you don't know from the conformist world that you're comfortable in, the only thing that could cause you to risk security, to risk the stability you know, for the instability you're sure you're going to get, is opportunity, profit, a job, success, the possibility of securing the pot at the end of the rainbow. The world of the globalist, as it developed, was the world that offered the big break. Because it was a world that was constantly changing, constantly in flux, It was a world that people found it hard to resist. Leaving the lap of security for the risk of not knowing was a gamble. But if the payoff was high enough, was big enough, many people believed that the gamble was worth it. Here's the kicker. The opportunities of a global world, the opportunities of international capitalism, have long been the attraction that has lured people away out of their communities and into a world that they find themselves scurrying to understand. Many of them went back to school. Many of them would take a job and go to school at night or on weekends. Many of them took 2 jobs. Whatever it took to have a shot at the American dream, or the dream, if you will, was worth the gamble. What makes the Great Divide now different is that the opportunities of globalism that used to attract people are gone. Jobs are not being created. New opportunities are not replacing lost opportunities. People who are losing their jobs are finding themselves permanently unemployed. They're finding themselves without the skills to even be competitive for the fewer and fewer jobs in this new technological world that they find themselves in. There are a lot of opportunities in the information age, but in order to take advantage of them, you've got to have skills and abilities that darn few of the people we're talking about have. Once they lose it, it's gone, and there's nothing to replace it. And that's the world that we're experiencing now. That's the world of the new capitalism. That's the world that is finally forcing people who thought they had everything in place to dig in their heels and saying, damn it, I'm not going to go for this. Why would I give up everything that I value for a world that is nothing but a gamble and a risk when there's no payoff? And so, in effect, they're saying, and this is a direct quote out of the ebook, their answer is, hell no. Not me. I'm staying where I am. Not only that, but I'll find other people who agree with me, and we'll all band together, and we'll not move. And we'll find somebody who'll take our message to the top of the mountain where everybody can hear it. And that somebody might be leaving the European Union. It might be thumbing our nose at the international financial community, as Greece thought about doing. Or it might be electing Donald Trump as President of the United States. Oh, he's uncouth. Oh, he says some things that make people uncomfortable. Oh, he insults some people. He doesn't play the rules. He's not politically correct. He seems to violate all the rules. But none of that matters. Because what he promises us is something that nobody else is promising us. He's promising us the world that we used to have, the world that we knew. Here in Appalachia, he's promising us coal jobs. He's basically telling us to have faith. Give me a chance and I'll prove to you that coal's not dead. We can bring back the quality of life that you all had when times were good. The fact that the data doesn't support that, the fact that there's all sorts of evidence that that's never going to happen, the fact that this is a pipe dream, Donald Trump is telling us straight up, what the hell do you have to lose? Give me a chance. It's hard to tell how many people are willing to do that. That's the division. That's the world. It's a changing world. All the things that we've been talking about here in the virtual center, as far as education is concerned, speak to an education for a changing world. Basically, what we've been talking about, what everybody talks about when they talk about educational reform, is better preparing people to be successful in the world that all of us are going to have to find a way to live in. It's based on the assumption that the conformist world is doomed. It may experience temporary success for a while, but there's no way it can hold off the tides of change that are coming. And so what we're talking about is an approach to education which will best prepare people to function in that world and to enable them to be successful in it. I would suggest to you that those who are trying to hold on to the comfort of the world that was, give us examples of the nature of this struggle. Those people who resisted the Common Core standards. Oh, they talked all about the godlessness and all these other things. But the fact of the matter is, they were more comfortable with a world they knew than a world that they didn't know. They were more comfortable with a school system that educated their children to believe what they believed, to subscribe to the same values that they subscribed to. And they fought hard to make sure that this new world didn't crack their world, didn't cross their line in the sand. This weekend, in the New York Times, there was a study. Let me get my head together. This is not the New York Times. This was an article here in West Virginia in the Charleston Gazette. Date September 3rd, which means it was Saturday, day before yesterday. The title of the article, Decline of Religion Helps Democratic Party. The author, James Haught, H-A-U-G-H-T. James Haught used to be the editor of the Charleston Gazette. He is now editor emeritus. He's retired. He wrote this piece, which includes some data relevant to West Virginia, but that verifies and validates the Great Divide perspective that we've been looking at. Mr. Hart acknowledges in his article that the world, the developed world as we know it, Western civilization, has reached what he calls, and has been predicted to happen, the secular age. The power of religion over society is receding. It's disappearing. Here, very honestly, in Appalachia, it's probably disappearing more slowly than in other parts of the world. But it's happening. He points out that after World War II, Europe started to move in this direction. People who take polls about their religion are increasingly declaring none as their religion. Europeans who regularly attend worship services in whatever church, synagogue, or whatever, have declined to the point that in some nations, fewer than 10% of the population are regular churchgoers, whatever the church. More and more people respond to polls by saying they don't belong to any denomination, any organized church, any parish, or any local church on a regular basis. It is an expanding secular world where people's inclination to look to God and look to Scripture for answers to the day-to-day challenges of life are becoming less and less frequent. Gradually, that secular trend spread to Canada, Australia, Japan, many other democracies throughout the world, and now, Mr. Hart reports, it's occurring in America. People are telling pollsters that their religion is none, to the tune of 1/4 of the U.S. population. Can you imagine? 1/4 of the polled population of today's United States, when asked their religious denomination, put none. 1 out of every 4. 1/3 of Americans under 30 years of age, don't regularly attend worship services anywhere.
Hey, Dr. Bill.
What that means is the younger generation indicates, the data indicates, that this secular trend is expanding. It's even wider among young people than it is among older people.
Hey, Dr. Bill.
And the fact of the matter is, those who do not attend church regularly tend to be liberal. They tend to be democratic in their values. They tend to think in terms which we call progressive.
Hey, Bill.
It's entirely possible,
Dr. Bill,
that the none people, the people who register none when asked their religious denomination, will decide the elections on November 8th. A prominent journalist, Matthew Sheffield, is writing a book on this trend. He has published a research report entitled "The Decline of Religion is the GOP's Great Demographic Crisis." The Republican Party, as it has traditionally existed and adhered to the values of Christianity in a more general sense, is on the decline. Sheffield points out that in 2012, Mitt Romney won the presidential election among churchgoers. Those who didn't go to church defeated Romney. That value system, which is associated with regular churchgoers, is declining. And the people who register none on the polls is increasing. What am I suggesting here? I am suggesting that this data is a reflection of the great divide we've been talking about in today's program up until now. This is from Mr. Hott's article in the Charleston Gazette on Saturday, September 3rd. In 7 key states, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, New Hampshire, Mitt Romney won the majority of the Christian vote, ended up losing each of these states because he was soundly defeated among non-Christians. Polls show that non-voters, those who put down none when asked their religious denomination, voted for Barack Obama in 2012, according to the following turnout vote margins. Virginia voted for Barack Obama 78% to 22%. In other words, 78% of the nones of the non-religious denomination, non-religion affiliated voters supported Barack Obama. Only 22% of them supported Romney in Virginia. In Pennsylvania, 74 to 25%. In Florida, 72 to 26%. In Wisconsin, 73 to 25%. And on it goes. Already we know that non-denominational voters are much more inclined to vote Democratic. And the polling amongst young people indicates that that trend is getting bigger and bigger, which means that the traditional Republican Party support base is shrinking. What is it then that these people who vote, who indicate none when asked their religious denomination, what are they like? What kinds of people are they? What are their values? This is what James Hott writes in his article. Young nones, N-O-N-E-S, are generally tolerant and humane. They support the right of gays to marry. They support women's right to choose to end a pregnancy. They would end the death penalty. They would legalize marijuana. They support universal health care for everyone. They reject most of the harsh Puritanism of the GOP and its fundamentalist wing. They embrace compassionate democratic values. White evangelicals vote Republican just as overwhelmingly as the nuns vote Democratic. Currently, both segments are equally balanced. Each group comprises about 1/5 to 1/4 of the U.S. voting population. The difference is white evangelicals are shrinking, churchless groups, individuals, are growing rapidly. Hott concludes that this secularizing trend seems unstoppable. In essence, even in West Virginia, he points out, we see many of the things that used to be illegal in West Virginia now becoming legal. Now you can get a drink before noon on a Sunday in West Virginia. I can remember when I first came here in the 1970s, the only way you could get a mixed drink in a bar of any kind was if it was a private club and you were a member. And even then, you had to bring your own. You couldn't buy it. You brought your own in a bag, in a brown paper bag. The stores in West Virginia that sold alcohol, bottled liquor, were called Polk stores. Because when you bought it, the proprietor put your bottle in a blank paper bag. So when you saw people walking around with brown paper bags, you know they had been to a Polk store and they were carrying alcohol. And they were violating the rules and the laws of the society that were in place at that time, but not now. Not now, one after the other of those restrictions have disappeared. The old Puritan blue laws in New England, which used to force businesses to close on Sundays, have been lifted. Now, establishments that sell alcohol are open on Sundays, and on and on and on. You can see this secularizing trend. What I'm suggesting is, if you look at this purely from a religious perspective, then you draw your conclusions that way. But if you stand back and you see this as an example of what we've called the Great Divide, you can begin to see that it's coming from many different directions at the same time. It seems to be unstoppable. And more people are building their analysis based on these trends, which seem impossible to stop. If there's some consternation in today's elections about why it's closer than it seems to be or ought to be, it's because of the negative favorability of the two candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I don't know how many places and different situations I've heard people make the comment, if Vice President Joe Biden were the Democratic nominee for president rather than Hillary Clinton, this election would already be over because Trump is that unpopular. The group that support him is that small, and it's getting smaller. the overwhelming trend changes in society would support the Democratic candidate. The only thing that's keeping that level of support contained is that the candidate with the nomination happens to be Hillary Clinton. I mentioned at the beginning of our program 2 hours ago that Chris Reagan, an attorney in Wheeling, West Virginia, had published a piece this past weekend in the Wheeling Intelligencer. It's a piece, the link to which I put on Facebook, on our Facebook page. In my comments, I indicated it's not just worth a read. It's worth a regular read over and over again, because it's a reminder. It's a reminder that while we collect data and continue to do research to understand more and more and more about what makes the tribalist mentality tick, we need to recognize that those people benefiting most from all of this are those groups of the white wealthy, not the white poor that are supporting Donald Trump, but the white wealthy, those who are reaping the financial benefits of what's going on in our society. Most of what they are reading and most of what they are publishing and most of what they are talking about pertains to people who are not them. It is the people at the top giving us more and more data about the people who are at the bottom. And if we really wanted to do something meaningful about all of this, in terms of giving people the tools they need to function productively and independently in a changing international environment, then we would do something about the levels of inequality that exist in our society. We would take the tens of billions of dollars that are being lifted or taken out of the economy and put in tax-free accounts scattered around the world. We would use that revenue to really be creating jobs and opportunities for people. What we're talking about is a world in which scarcity is at least in part intentional. We are forcing people to make quality of life adjustments to a standard of living that is getting leaner and leaner. We're talking about how to get people's ability to adjust to a world, back to the title of this ebook, back to the world of post-scarcity. A world in which opportunities and resources are becoming narrower and narrower, less scarce and less scarce. As people are being forced to compete increasingly for what proverbially we used to refer to as the crumbs, while the 1% continues to take the bulk of the profits from the top. That, Chris Reagan writes, is really the reform that would make man's adjustments to the world of globalism meaningful and worthwhile. it would put opportunity back into the equation by making equity and fairness a realistic objective of change, rather than forcing more and more people to figure out how they're going to make it in a world that offers them less and less opportunity to be successful. This Reagan piece is one I would suggest would be well worth reading more than once. Reagan points out that a popular bestseller right now is entitled Hillbilly Elegy. The author, J.D. Vance. It's hit the top of the charts. It's, as Reagan said, full of ideas about job training, drug treatment, charter schools, a better safety net, more people going back to church, you name it. But as Reagan points out, books like that are not for the white working class. They're written by and for the white wealthy class. They're packed with what the white wealthy class wants to hear about the problems of the white working class. They're selling briskly. The white wealthy class, Reagan says, devoured and adored Hillbilly Elegy for a very familiar reason. It blames everyone and everything but them for what has happened to America's middle class. Wealthy people are comforted by the idea that working people just seem to quit trying hard like they used to. They stopped going to church like they're supposed to. They're not staying married anymore like they should have. And they've gotten on drugs. Somehow it's comforting for the well-to-do to know that everything that's happening to the white working class is their own fault, not mine. I bear no responsibility, but I find it comforting to read data and accounts of what these people are doing or not doing that they shouldn't do or should be doing. It used to be that people did the right thing. They didn't ask questions. They worked. They went to school. They tried. They went to church. They absorbed values. They never questioned, etc., etc., etc. Now we're in this world which seems to be in free fall. It's comforting for me to know in a book like Vance's Hillbilly Elegy that it's their fault, not mine. Because personally, I'm doing fine. And if they're not, then it's comforting for me to know that it's their fault, not my fault. Reagan points out, oh, yes, it is. If you were really committed to the value system you seem to support, the idea that everybody deserves a chance, the idea that living and acting like a real Christian involves a lot more than what you read in going to church one day a week and being prominent and visiting worship services on a regular basis in order to make sure that people see you. Being a Christian would mean living as a Christian. And that would be doing things like putting a limit on what you're forcing poor people to pay for drugs. The EpiPen scandal that we've been through over the last week. And the education system. It would mean bringing the tens of billions of dollars sitting in tax-free accounts overseas back into this country, paying your fair share, putting government back on its feet again, generating the kind of revenue, creating the kind of jobs that give people the incentive to work and the incentive to pick up the skills and get the training they need to get good jobs. All of these things would matter if Christianity as a value system was really driving the world around us. Reagan points out that it's not. We've reached the end of our day. It's 59 minutes after the hour. I want to thank you for being with us on this wonderful Labor Day. I do remind you that we will not be doing a live program again tomorrow or Wednesday as we usually do. And so our next time back together again will be next Monday. This is Bill O'Brien. Thank you so much for supporting the Virtual Center and for your continued support of the Head On Radio Network. Thank you so very, very much. Have a great Labor Day.